You never expect betrayal to come wrapped in your sister's smile. But when mine stole the biggest idea of my life, I didn't cry, I didn't yell, I just watched and waited, because what she didn't know was that I had set a quiet little trap. She thought she humiliated me in front of everyone. But when I stood up, 6 words turned the entire room upside down and left her reputation in flames. I'm Sloane, not the girl who walks into a room and draws all the light to herself. No, I've always been more of a shadow watcher, a quiet presence with loud thoughts. While most kids on our street played dress up and built imaginary families in plastic dollhouses, I sat cross-legged on my bedroom carpet with a screwdriver in one hand and a circuit board in the other, my fingers stained with ink and oil. I found magic in the hum of wires and the flicker of blue LED lights. My universe wasn't made of glitter or tea parties. It was made of gears, code, and pages of scribbled designs I kept folded under my mattress like they were too precious to show the world just yet. My bedroom, small but sacred, smelled faintly of soldering metal and lemon-scented furniture polish. There was a dent in the corner of my desk where I'd accidentally dropped my first prototype drone, and I never fixed it, like a little scar I wore with pride. That room was where I built things, failed things, learned things, and where I felt most like myself. Alone, sure, but not lonely. Emery, on the other hand, was everything I wasn't, and maybe everything I was never supposed to be. She was older by 2 years, but somehow felt like she belonged to a different universe altogether. She moved through life like the world owed her a spotlight, and to be honest, it usually gave it to her. Her laugh, loud, golden, contagious. Her eyes sparkled like she had secrets everyone wanted to be part of. People leaned toward her like she carried gravity in her bones. Even our teachers would light up when she entered the room, their voices taking on this soft warmth they never used with me. And she knew it. God, did she know it? At family dinners, while I quietly placed my napkin in my lap and waited for someone to ask about my latest project, Emery would burst into the dining room already halfway through some dramatic story. She'd wave her hands, toss her hair, and have everyone, from our baby cousin to our stone-faced uncle, hanging on her every word. I remember one Thanksgiving, I tried to explain how I was learning to simulate neural networks using Python, and my uncle blinked at me like I'd spoken a foreign language. 5 minutes later, Emery had him laughing about a TikTok dance she made go viral. That moment stuck with me, like a splinter. Still, I didn't really mind. Not outwardly. I learned to fold my excitement into smaller, quieter victories. When my robot arm prototype finally managed to lift a tennis ball without snapping it in half, I didn't need a round of applause. Just watching the servo motors obey the code I'd written felt like winning. I didn't need to outshine her. I just needed space to be my own kind of bright. But space with Emery was limited. She was like a wildfire, beautiful, but always expanding, always consuming. There were signs, little red flags I brushed off for years. Like the time in middle school when I hand-painted a galaxy-themed hoodie for our school's Spirit Week. The night before I was supposed to wear it, it vanished. 2 days later, Emery showed up to a party wearing it like it was her latest fashion find. "Oh," she said when I asked about it, tilting her head in mock innocence, "I thought you were done with it." I told myself it didn't matter. It was just a hoodie, just paint. But deep down it did matter. Not because of the hoodie, but because of what it said about her, and maybe about me. That I was the kind of person who created quietly, and she was the kind who took loudly, and got away with it. It's weird how you can love someone and still feel them slowly hollowing you out. Our parents never seemed to notice. Or maybe they just didn't want to. Emery was their golden girl. Straight A's. Well, most of them mine if you asked me. Lead in the school musical. Homecoming court. if she forgot to wash the dishes or slammed the door after a fight. It was just Emery being Emery. But if I rolled my eyes, Sloan, don't be so bitter. If I locked my door to keep her from rifling through my sketchbooks, don't be so possessive. Somehow, her chaos was charm, and my boundaries were attitude. Still, I kept the peace, mostly for my own sanity. I told myself we were just different people, that I wasn't built for the spotlight, and she couldn't survive without it, that some people paint the picture and others stand in front of it, and I was okay being the painter. Really, I was, until the day she crossed a line I couldn't unsee. I remember it too, clearly, the way her eyes flicked to my laptop screen when I excitedly showed her my prototype for the mentorship app. The way her smile tightened, just a little, when I explained how it used AI to connect underserved teens with local mentors. That's actually kind of cool, she had said, sipping from her smoothie like it wasn't a big deal. But maybe make it prettier. It looks a little plain. I laughed it off, brushing the comment aside. I didn't realize I was handing her the blueprint she would later present as her own. I didn't realize I was handing her the very thing she'd steal. It wasn't until a week later, when the competition presenter list went live, and I saw her name beside my project title, that the pieces clicked. At first, I blinked, sure it was a typo. But then I watched the demo video linked under her submission. My code, my interface, my tagline, and her face, smiling, confident, victorious. I don't remember breathing as I clicked replay. My pulse thudded in my ears. My hands were ice cold, but my cheeks burned. Rage, confusion, betrayal, and something else, something sharp and ancient, humiliation. I felt like I was 10 years old again, watching her wear my hoodie like it had always been hers. But now, it wasn't just paint. It was my future, my hard work, my identity. When I confronted her, she didn't even flinch. She smirked like she was amused. "Oh, come on, Sloan," she said, flipping her hair over one shoulder. "It's not like you patented it. And honestly, I polished it. Yours was kind of rough. You should be thanking me. You'll get credit indirectly." Indirectly. That word felt like a gut punch, like being erased with a smile. I stood there, frozen between the urge to scream and the temptation to cry. But I did neither. Instead, I walked away, not because I was weak, but because I had already started to think. Because something inside me whispered, "Don't fight her loud, fight her smart." And that's when everything changed. I never really minded being the quieter sister, until she decided that what was mine should be hers. It all started with the senior capstone competition, an event that carried far more weight than the faculty or student body seemed to understand. To them, it was just another annual thing, a portfolio booster, maybe bragging rights if you landed in the top 3. But for me, it was the one shot I'd been working towards since I first taught myself JavaScript at 13, sitting on the floor of our musty basement with a hand-me-down Dell laptop and Wi-Fi that only worked if I sat exactly 3 feet from the router. The prize wasn't just a certificate or a photo in the school paper. It was a full scholarship to the state university and an internship at Artemis Technologies, a firm so competitive people joked you had to sell your soul or build a rocket to get in. I didn't have a flashy resume or family connections. What I had was desperation and discipline and a real burning reason to win. My parents never said it out loud, but we all knew they couldn't afford college for both me and Emery. She had options, already talking to a private school with a cheer scholarship. Me? I'd been eating instant noodles between tutoring gigs and stashing away babysitting money since sophomore year. Every dollar mattered. Every hour of lost sleep. Every extra line of code. None of it was optional. It was survival. So when the competition was announced, I threw myself into it like it was my last breath. The concept I developed was something I'd been thinking about for over a year, ever since I'd watched one of my classmates, Noah, quietly drop out halfway through junior year. He was brilliant, way smarter than people gave him credit for. But he had no support system, no mentors, no one to help him navigate job applications or scholarship essays. I couldn't stop wondering how many other kids like him were just slipping through the cracks, invisible. That's when the idea came to me, a community-driven mentorship app powered by machine learning that matched at-risk students with real-time guidance based on their needs, location, and academic goals. The AI wouldn't just connect people. It would learn from each match and optimize future pairings. Think Tinder meets LinkedIn, but for mentorship, and with an ethical, student-first design at the core. I poured myself into it, like I was building a life raft. Every night after dinner, I'd lock myself in my room, plug in my headphones, and lose myself in the work. I sketched interface wireframes in a battered notebook, ran surveys with underclassmen and teachers, and set up calls with youth counselors for feedback. There were nights I forgot to eat, times I blinked at my screen at 2 a.m., wondering if this was brilliance or obsession. Maybe both. But the app started taking shape. Real shape. I could feel it breathing through the glowing screen. It wasn't just about fancy features. It was the soul of the thing that made it special. I called it Bridge, short for building real impact, delivering guidance everywhere. The tagline still gives me chills. No student should ever feel alone in a system built to serve them. The back end was tricky. I worked for weeks on streamlining the recommendation algorithm so that it wouldn't just pair kids with the first available volunteer, but actually filter based on communication style, background, and learning compatibility. I tested it with dummy data, refined it, broke it, rebuilt it better. Each improvement made me feel closer to something meaningful, but no one knew how much time, sweat, or heart had gone into it, not even my parents. They just saw me hunched over my laptop every night and mumbled something about me working too hard. Emery? She didn't ask once. Not that I expected her to. She was always too busy being adored, going viral for a dance video or FaceTiming boys whose names changed weekly. Still, she came home that weekend like it was some normal visit. "I missed you guys," she said, tossing her duffel onto the couch and flashing her perfect teeth. Her tone had that performative sweetness, the kind she saved for moments when she wanted something. I told myself I was being paranoid. Maybe she really did want to reconnect. Maybe she just wanted a few nights in her old bed, some of Mom's pasta, a chance to pretend we were still close. I should have known better. The night before submission was chaotic, but I was in the zone. I had made the final UI tweak, double-checked every function, then zipped up the project folder into a neat submission package. I remember feeling weirdly proud, like I just tucked a child into bed after their first day of school. I closed the lid of my laptop and left it charging in the kitchen while I ran upstairs to take a quick shower. The water was warm, but my mind stayed restless. I kept thinking about the app's onboarding screen, wondering if the color gradient felt too harsh. Maybe I'd swap the deep violet for a calmer teal in the morning. Just a minor visual update before the upload. When I came downstairs, I stopped cold at the bottom step. Something was wrong. It was subtle, just the angle of the laptop. I'd left it facing outward, the way I always did. But now the screen was closed and shifted slightly left on the table. It was nothing most people would notice, but I noticed the charger light was blinking, not solid green like before. That meant the lid had been opened. The system had been activated. My heartbeat picked up, slow at first, then faster. I walked toward it, trying to stay calm, telling myself I was being ridiculous. Maybe Mom had moved it. Maybe the cat knocked it slightly. Maybe, but the browser was open. And the tab, history, it was cleared. That had never happened before. Not once. I felt a knot tighten in my chest, but I forced myself to brush it off. Emery was upstairs, watching TV, probably. I told myself to breathe, told myself not to jump to conclusions. After all, she didn't know anything about code. She didn't even know my password, right? I didn't sleep well that night. My thoughts kept circling back to that slight shift, that cleared history. A pit had settled in my stomach like a warning. The next morning, I walked into school with a mixture of anxiety and caffeine keeping me upright. I checked the official presenter list posted in the hallway. A few friends from robotics club were standing near it, murmuring over the sheet. Then I saw it. Emery Whitmore, project title, Bridge, a mentorship AI for youth. I stared at the paper, blinked, stared again. My name was nowhere. But the app, the name, the description, mine. My fingers curled into fists. The air in the hallway felt suddenly too thin. A ringing sound echoed in my ears, and I couldn't tell if it was in my head or actually happening. I clicked the link below her name that led to the preview video. My heart almost stopped. The splash screen was identical. The logo I designed in Canva at 2 a.m. The tagline, my tagline, read out by some AI voiceover she probably downloaded last minute. Even the button layout and app transitions were the same. It was like watching myself in a funhouse mirror. Twisted, mocked, stolen. I barely remember walking up to her. She was in the student lounge, sipping iced coffee with her usual group of fan club followers. When she saw me coming, she gave me that smug, knowing smile that made my blood run cold. "You stole it," I said, voice shaking but firm. She shrugged. "Relax, Sloan. It's just a school contest." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You copied my entire submission." Her eyes sparkled with defiance. "I tweaked a few things. Besides, you never said it was off limits. You act like you invented oxygen or something. I worked on that app for months. It's my work. My name should be on it." She leaned forward, taking a deliberate sip of her coffee, the ice cubes clicking like punctuation marks. "Don't be such a gatekeeper," she said, rolling her eyes. That word, gatekeeper, hit me like a slap across the face. I felt something unravel inside me. Not just rage, not just betrayal, but a sudden, furious clarity. Emery would never stop. She believed she was untouchable, charming, untouchable, but she didn't know who she was dealing with. I wanted to scream, to rip the truth into every wall of that school, to make everyone see who she really was. But Emery had charm, connections, a following. Me, I had the truth, and a plan. The night before the presentations was one of those rare moments where time seemed to both stretch endlessly and race by all at once. I remember sitting cross-legged on my bed, laptop balanced precariously on my knees, the soft blue glow of the screen casting sharp shadows across the walls of my dimly lit room. Outside, the world was silent, the kind of heavy silence that wraps around your ears, broken only by the occasional creak of the old house settling or the faint hum of crickets in the backyard. It was past midnight, the kind of hour where every small noise feels amplified, and your mind wrestles with 1,000 different thoughts all at once. I was exhausted. My eyes burned from staring at lines of code for hours. My fingers ached from typing and clicking, but the fire inside me wouldn't let me stop. Not now. Not when I was so close. I could feel the weight of everything hanging on this moment. The scholarship, the internship, my future. This wasn't just a school project. This was everything I'd been fighting for since I first dreamed of escaping the chaos and living a life where my talent mattered. That night, I worked on one final feature, a subtle, almost invisible signature I wove deep into the fabric of the app. Every time someone launched the program, it would quietly display metadata embedded in the code, showing the true author. It wasn't flashy or obvious, but it was there, a digital watermark that screamed, "This belongs to me." I knew Emery had my prototype. I knew she was going to present it as her own tomorrow. She didn't realize that by copying the synced folder on our shared cloud drive, she was about to walk onto that stage and trigger the proof that she wasn't the creator, that I was. By 2 a.m., I finally leaned back against my pillows, heart pounding but oddly calm. I closed my laptop, letting the night's cool silence fill the room. The final step was done. The trap was set. The morning came in a rush of pale sunlight filtering through the curtains and the distant buzz of morning traffic. But for me, the real moment waited at the school auditorium, a cavernous space filled with rows of folding chairs, the faint scent of polished wood mingling with popcorn and anticipation. I arrived early, heart thudding in my chest, palms sweaty despite the cool air conditioning. The room was already filling up. Teachers in stiff blouses and ties, students whispering nervously in cliques, and the panel of judges seated at the front, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and polite impatience. And there, center stage, was Emery. She was practically glowing, radiating a smug confidence I'd never seen in her when she wasn't performing. Her posture was impeccable, chest out, chin high, the picture of triumph even before she had begun. The bright lights above caught the shimmer of her carefully styled hair, the gloss on her lips, and the flash of her perfect smile. She soaked in the crowd's attention as if it were a drug, and I could almost taste the bitterness rising in my throat. I took a seat in the third row, as inconspicuous as I could be, though my heart hammered so loudly I thought it might give me away. I watched as Emery stepped up to the podium and flipped open her laptop, fingers dancing over the keys with the ease of someone who thought they owned the stage. She launched the app. The room went quiet, expectant, but instead of the sleek, colorful splash screen Emery had probably rehearsed a dozen times, the projector lit up with stark, unforgiving white text on a black background. Original creator, Sloan Whitmore. Unauthorized use detected. A collective gasp rippled through the auditorium like a sudden electric shock. I heard whispers, soft but sharp like the whisper of silk against skin, filled with disbelief and curiosity. "Did she really just do that?" someone murmured behind me. Laughter bubbled up from a few corners, nervous chuckles mingling with stunned silence. Emery froze, her body rigid, as if the words on the screen had punched her right in the gut. Her face drained of color, her usual sparkle replaced by something raw and exposed. The breath caught in her throat as she stared at the screen, eyes wide like a trapped animal caught in the headlights. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. Then she stammered, almost inaudibly, "I don't. That wasn't supposed to." Her voice trembled, cracking under the weight of the moment. She blinked rapidly, struggling to find footing on a stage that suddenly felt like a trap. For a heartbeat, the room was frozen. The buzz of the projector, the hum of the air conditioning, even the creak of the folding chairs seemed to fade into an oppressive silence. Then, with slow determination, I stood up from my seat. The air around me felt thick and heavy, like walking through water. My steps were quiet, measured, calm. No one expected me to move. No one expected me to walk to the stage. But I did. The crowd's murmurs grew louder, a mixture of surprise and growing anticipation. Faces turned to watch me, their expressions a blend of shock and curiosity. Some students whispered, "Is she going to say something?" while others simply stared, breathless. My heart pounded fiercely, but my face betrayed none of the turmoil inside. I was the eye of the storm, calm and focused, Every step I took was a quiet reclaiming my voice, my work, and my future. As I reached the stage, the spotlight caught the determined set of my jaw, the steady gaze in my eyes. The words burned bright on the screen behind me, demanding attention. And I was ready. I didn't need to say much. The room was heavy with tension, thick enough to choke on. The words on the screen behind me still lingered, flashing like a spotlight on everything Emery had tried to hide. I could feel dozens of eyes on me, curious, skeptical, maybe even a little suspicious, waiting to see if I could back up what the screen had already declared. One of the judges, a stern-looking woman with sharp eyes and a clipboard in her lap, broke the silence. "Ms. Whitmore, can you verify the authorship of this project?" Her voice was steady, professional, but there was an undercurrent of urgency, as if she needed more than just words. I reached into my backpack and pulled out a slim, neat folder I had prepared the night before. The paper inside was crisp, carefully organized, and it held everything: timestamp source code printouts, GitHub commit logs with my username etched clearly beside every update, emails from my mentor confirming every phase of development, and even a photo of my battered notebook, the one where I had first sketched the UI on napkins, scrap paper, and the edges of textbooks during late-night study sessions. I could see the judge lean forward, her eyes scanning the documents with quick precision. The rest of the panel exchanged glances, the weight of evidence sinking in. Emery, standing to the side, looked pale now. Her usual confidence was unraveling fast, replaced by a nervous jitter in her shoulders. She opened her mouth, likely to say something, but the words came out as a stammered mess. It's a collaboration," she insisted, voice shaky, eyes darting between the judges, and me. We worked on it together. I helped with, the UI, the presentation." The judges exchanged looks that said everything. This wasn't collaboration. This was theft. The lead judge tapped her pen on the table, the sound sharp and final. "Given the evidence presented, we have no choice but to disqualify Ms. Whitmore's submission from the competition." Her eyes didn't waver as she said it. "Ms. Whitmore," that second time directed at me, "would you please take her place and present your project?" A wave of relief and disbelief crashed over me all at once. I barely had time to process before I found myself standing up, walking toward the podium, every step surreal and weighty. My hands trembled slightly, but I forced them to steady as I opened my laptop and connected it to the projector. The audience settled, anticipation crackling in the air like static. I took a deep breath, feeling the cool microphone against my fingertips and the polished wood of the podium beneath my palms. This was my moment, but I wasn't just here to present lines of code or impress with technical jargon. No, this was bigger than that. So, instead of diving straight into features and algorithms, I began with the heart, the reason behind the project. I looked out into the crowd, meeting the eyes of students and teachers alike. "This app isn't just a collection of code and functions," I said, my voice steady but warm. "It's for the kids who feel invisible, the ones who don't get noticed because they don't fit the mold, like my classmate Noah, who left school early because he had no one to guide him. This app is a bridge, connecting those students with mentors who can help them find their path." I shared stories of the students I had interviewed, the counselors who inspired me, the countless nights spent debugging and dreaming of a tool that could change lives. I told them about the potential that goes unnoticed every day, and how, with the right support and tools, we could ignite that spark. The room was silent, but it wasn't the uncomfortable silence of doubt. It was the quiet stillness of understanding, the kind that settles when you realize this isn't just a project. It's a mission. When I finished, I expected polite applause. Instead, the auditorium erupted, not just in claps, but in cheers. Genuine, heartfelt, electrifying. that moment, standing there bathed in the warmth of that response, felt like the first time I truly owned my voice. I won, not just the scholarship or the internship, though those alone felt like mountains I'd climbed barefoot in the snow, but something much deeper, something I hadn't dared to admit I wanted until it was finally mine. My own voice, finally heard, recognized, respected. The weeks that followed were surreal, like waking up inside a dream where the roles had reversed, but the script was still unfamiliar. Emery? She became a ghost in the halls. Once the golden girl, the center of every conversation and every room, she now avoided me like I carried a curse. Her usual smirk was gone, replaced by sharp glances that darted away whenever our paths crossed. I caught her once near the library, sitting alone with her phone pressed to her ear, her voice a low murmur, full of frustration and something like regret. But she never looked up when I walked by. Not once. Our parents, meanwhile, were furious. But strangely, their anger wasn't aimed at me. Instead, they lashed out at her, the daughter who had once been their pride and joy, but had now revealed a side they never wanted to see. They questioned her motives, her integrity, and sometimes even her future. The household tension thickened, turning dinners into uncomfortable silences or quiet arguments behind closed doors. Emery tried desperately to control the narrative, painting me as vindictive and jealous, someone who couldn't handle her success and had orchestrated a public humiliation. She spread whispers at school, tried to rally friends to her side. But the truth, as it always does, proved louder than any story she could spin. My truth was in the code, in the emails, in the late nights and early mornings. It was in every line I'd written, every problem I'd solved alone, and every dream I'd stitched together with determination and hope. And today, that app, Bridge, is live in 3 school districts, expanding steadily as we partner with more communities and mentors. My name isn't just on the project. It's part of the story we tell when we talk about who built this bridge, who fought for it, and who refuses to let the kids we serve fall through the cracks. My story is in the press releases, in the interviews with local news stations, and in the emails I get from students telling me how Bridge helped them find someone who believed in them. It's in every smile I see when a kid who once felt invisible finally knows they're seen. Every time someone tries to take something that doesn't belong to them, a dream, a credit, a piece of who you are, I remember what I did. I remember that night in the auditorium, the flashing words on the screen, the silence that broke like thunder. I remember standing up, calm and unshaken, and reclaiming what was mine. So here's my advice. The advice I wish I'd had when I was sitting in that audience, feeling invisible and powerless. When someone steals your light, don't chase them. Don't yell. Don't scream. Don't burn yourself out trying to wrest it back with noise. Just wait. Wait until they plug it in. And realize you still control the switch.